The Supreme Court just issued a judgment that would stun the whole country in a groundbreaking 6-3 decision. An important turning point in the history of the fight for gun control has been reached with the upholding of the long-discussed assault weapon and rifle ban, which was previously found unlawful. Following last week's historic decision expanding individual gun rights, the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday overturned a number of lower court decisions that had upheld gun restrictions, including Maryland's ban on assault-style rifles and New Jersey's and California's bans on large-capacity ammunition magazines. In light of their decision on June 23rd, declaring for the first time a constitutional right to carry a pistol in public for self-defense, the justices' decisions remanded several cases to lower courts for reconsideration. The restrictions on carrying concealed handguns outside the house in New York State were overturned by a 6-3 decision, which just decided elimination of carry laws and rifle bans, with the conservative justices in the majority and the liberal justices dissenting. The statute passed in 1913 was ruled to violate the Second Amendment's guarantee of the freedom to keep and bear arms by the court. The opinion, which was written by Justice Clarence Thomas, may overturn similar limitations in other states and jeopardize various kinds of municipal, state, and federal gun control measures countrywide. There are no other constitutional rights that a person can enjoy only after proving to government officials that they have a unique need, Thomas stated. In a society with high levels of firearms violence, including multiple mass shootings, gun rights are a difficult topic. They were given by the country's founders in the 18th century and are dearly held by many Americans. Just recently, 10 people were killed on May 14th at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York, and 19 students and 2 instructors perished on May 24th at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. The move was criticized by President Joe Biden, who has termed gun violence a national shame. This decision should cause great concern for all of us, according to Biden, as it goes against both common sense and the Constitution. We as a society must do more, not less, to protect our fellow Americans in the wake of the horrific attacks in Buffalo and Uvalde, as well as the daily acts of gun violence that do not make national headlines. In dissent, liberal Justice Stephen Breyer said that the court had increased gun rights without considering the nature or severity of gun violence in a nation where there are more weapons per person than any other. According to Breyer, the decision denies governments the authority to handle significant dangers. The Supreme Court reversed a decision by a lower court that had dismissed a legal challenge to the legislation brought by 2 gun owners and the New York chapter of the National Rifle Association, a powerful gun rights organization generally associated with Republicans. The court's conservative majority is inclined to an expansive view of Second Amendment rights, as demonstrated by Thursday's decision. It was the most significant declaration about gun rights in over a decade. In a case involving the District of Columbia, the court acknowledged an individual's right to keep weapons at home for self-defense for the first time in 2008. In 2010, the court extended this recognition to the states. According to New York law, applicants for unlimited concealed carry warrants have to persuade a state licensing official of a genuine necessity for self-defense, as opposed to a hypothetical one. The majority of applicants were granted unrestricted licenses. When compared to heavily populated New York City, they were granted more readily in rural regions. Warrants that are only valid for certain activities, such as target practice or hunting, may also be issued by officials. The decision made it clearer how courts must now determine whether rules are legal under the Second Amendment, mandating that they be similar with limitations that have typically been established throughout American history. But, according to Thomas, the concealed weapon law in New York failed this criterion. Gun control advocates worried that the decision could undermine laws restricting the sale of untraceable ghost guns built from online parts, expanded criminal background checks for gun buyers, and red flag laws that target the firearms of people deemed dangerous by the courts. They worried that it may jeopardize laws prohibiting guns in sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and airports. The decision will directly impact at least 6 states, including the District of Columbia, New York, California, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, which permit officials to decide whether a person is allowed to carry a concealed handgun in public, even if they meet certain requirements like passing criminal background checks. Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Delaware also grant officials some latitude. The decision allows states to ban firearms in sensitive places, potentially extending beyond the traditional examples of this category, such as courthouses and legislative buildings. Courts can use analogies to those historical regulations of sensitive locations, Thomas added. But Breyer questioned, so where does it leave the numerous locations in a contemporary metropolis without any evident analogs from the 18th or 19th centuries? What about the subways, bars, theaters, and sporting venues? The court is silent. It is awkward, but yes, this is happening in Supreme Court. Tom King, president of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, the state chapter of the National Rifle Association, told Reuters that he would want to see as few locations classified as sensitive as possible, and that he would bring legal challenges if, for instance, authorities attempted to ban firearms on subways or buses. In a concurring opinion, conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh said states might still demand fingerprints, background checks, mental health screenings, and firearms training sessions from applicants for licenses to carry weapons. Conservative Justice Samuel Alito disagreed in a separate concurring opinion that stricter gun laws like those in New York would prevent tragedies like the Buffalo Massacre. Democratic officials in California, the state with the largest population, said they will now hurry through the most stringent regulations permitted by the Supreme Court's decision. They had prepared legislation in anticipation of the outcome. Republicans are more likely than Democrats to criticize measures to limit ownership as harming people's capacity to protect themselves. Gun rights guaranteed by the Constitution are supported by a majority of Americans. Mayor of the nation's most populated city, New York City, Eric Adams, a Democrat and former police captain, forecast that more conflicts would escalate into bloodshed once it became simpler to carry a gun throughout the more than 8 million person metropolis. Adams stated during a press conference that this decision has made every single one of us less safe from gun violence. The appalling epidemic of gun violence that daily engulfs not just New York, but the entire nation is ignored by the decision. According to official figures that include both fatal and non-fatal shootings, 693 individuals have been shot in his city so far this year, which is a decrease of nearly 9% from the 765 during the same period last year. There have been other mass shootings in the U.S., including one on May 14th in Buffalo, New York, where a self-described white supremacist killed 10 black people. The system in New York State that limits the issuance of concealed carry permits to those who can demonstrate they have proper cause was found to be unconstitutional by the court's conservative majority. State Attorney General Rob Bonta acknowledged that a statute in California that had required permit applicants to demonstrate good cause was no longer valid. Yet, according to Bonta, the court did not disturb California's long-standing efforts to bar dangerous people from obtaining these permits. Given that California has the 44th lowest gun mortality rate out of the 50 states, Bonta said that the state's tight gun prohibitions are effective. California had a gun mortality rate of 8.5 per 100,000 people, lower below the national average of 13.7 and Mississippi's record high of 28.6. At 5.3, New York State ranked 46th from lowest. Among the 6 states and the District of Columbia, whose laws are impacted by the decision, are New York and California. Conferring to General Counsel Paige Graves, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority has started developing appropriate rules to keep dangerous weapons out of our subways, buses, and commuter trains. A similar prohibition on transportation would be lawfully challenged, said Tom King, president of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, one of the plaintiffs in the Supreme Court case. In the Supreme Court's ruling, he claimed there was nothing to suggest that carrying a hidden weapon was permitted anywhere else than the tube. But to everyone's surprise, public defenders organizations in New York City had backed the gun rights plaintiffs in the lawsuit, claiming that their clients, primarily Black and Latino New Yorkers, who were normally law-abiding but had been prosecuted for obtaining a pistol for self-defense or had been wrongly denied a warrant, were represented by them. It is crucial to do thorough background checks for anybody purchasing weapons. Eliminating legal loopholes that let people to purchase firearms through shady channels like private transactions, gun shows, or online auctions is part of this. Making sure background checks are necessary for all purchases, even personal ones, helps stop prohibited individuals from obtaining guns. Encouragement and rewards for secure firearm storage can assist in preventing unauthorized access and lowering the likelihood that firearms will be used in crimes or accidents. In order to prevent theft, illegal access, and tragic circumstances involving children or individuals in crisis, it is important to encourage the usage of secure gun safes, lockboxes, and gun locks. Particularly when no weapons are being used, this is true. These measures can aid in lowering gun violence in high-risk areas by addressing socioeconomic gaps, giving counseling, and promoting peaceful alternatives to violence. Remember to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from the world of firearms. Click on the video links popping on your screens to watch our other videos in a similar domain.